All right, so welcome into the live stream today. We're going to dive into XRP and really kind of the state of where XRP is. We won't get into some of the legal side of it. This is really more about an investment strategy, how to play this out over the next year to 2 years and what that might look like for you. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. As you guys know, we cover a lot of stuff here on the channel, quite a bit on the XRP topic. And it's one, a lot of our audience really follows XRP, and I do myself, full disclosure, I own XRP, and it's one of my favorite, projects overall, again, because of the utility aspect. We're going to break down into a lot of the kind of just the indicators that I continue to watch for all tokens. And every token that we're interested in, these are the times in which you want to be able to analyze how the market conditions are putting pressure on different projects. And this essentially, to me, starts to tell us when we have a project that's going to make it through a really hard winter. And when you have tokens or projects that have, a lot more weakness, or maybe not as good of a community, or maybe not as good a utility, then those usually show up pretty quickly in the bad times. Not necessarily the case with XRP. Make sure and put your questions though over on the sidebar. We'll try to get to that as quickly as we can. Also, make sure and like the video, because this is one thing that really helps us out. It makes us understand what you guys are really interested in. If you are a big XRP holder, I'd love to kind of get your, kind of just see what the audience is running right now. If you're holding XRP, hit that like button. We'll know quickly if you guys are into XRP in a big way. One of the things, though, that always leans me into projects is when the elite start talking about it. And I have a couple of clips here to kind of jump to. One is BIS's Coeur on innovation in digital currencies. This was at the Davos 2022 or 2020. And it's about having technology. And again, Davos is getting ready to happen again this year. But this was something that happened, I thought, interestingly enough,
it's not
where they were talking about
Where do you
XRP.
see the biggest advantage to stablecoins?
Well, it's about having a technology that cuts across borders and that can help cut the cost and improve the speed of cross-border payments, which everyone agrees now are too slow and too costly. So I would say the top priority for the global community is not about CBDC. CBDC will come in, so central bank digital currency. It will come in due course in different ways, and we're working on it. But the top urgent priority is to improve cross-border payments.
All right, so he just said it there, is that this has been going on for quite some time. When you look at cross-border payments and who is the killer app in the room, it has been, and I think will be, XRP and continue to be XRP. Sure, there are some other apps out there, dApps out there, that have the ability to eventually roll into that kind of utility, but XRP definitely is still leading the case. This is another interview that was recently done. And this was done by Layla Halpern. She does a couple of interviews, but she's done one here with a former SWIFT individual, and he kind of breaks down a couple of things here that I think are interesting. I want to play the back end of his little clip right here and what he talks about.
I don't believe Ripple is going to replace SWIFT. Ripple is one of the complementary networks which is going to allow those institutions who need real time to make use of that. And I think we're also seeing that SWIFT are changing their network capability so that real time will be a possibility as well. But we may also see Ripple XRP moving across the SWIFT network as a currency when we're perhaps using something like FX.
All right, so what he said here I thought was very telling. And what I mean by that is the sense that former SWIFT executive understands how the network works. And one of the key things he talked about was that XRP is when you need real time. Now, when you need real time, remember, most of the infrastructure around the banking system, the world economic system, has been structured to deal with the SWIFT architecture because that's what has been available. So once that you go to real time, it's like having 5G or 3G. Which one would you rather have? The idea of real time will not be at when you need it. It will be all the time. You will need it all the time. The ability to move cross-border payments in lightning speed and pretty much permissionless across what they're doing from a standpoint of XRP is absolutely the killer app here. And he did go on to say that may be a complementary thing to Swift. I still think this is the Swift genre, still speaking on for him, in the sense that those people, those types of people, are not in the framework of understanding that eventually their technology will be overtaken. And I still think that is going to be the case with Swift and how XRP can roll out. But the fact that they're recognizing this and that there are use cases and utility already in place, it already spells doom, I think, for where Swift is going to be going. And eventually, at some point, sure, there may be some handshakes, in the growth curve up, but unless there can be a new technology that can compete with Ripple, the opportunity is going to be very clear in the future about how this is going. There's another thing here that I think you have to concern yourself with, and this is something that I've talked about before, and I'm kind of curious, and I want you guys' opinion on this. And maybe this is a video that we break down, but there's a lot happening in Europe right now around crypto assets and the structure in which all of this is going to be governed. And of course, the number one nemesis, so to speak, of crypto assets in the EU is Christine Lagarde. Now, Christine Lagarde says crypto is worth nothing. Now, this is a very interesting aspect here because she is the president of the European Central Bank, ECB. This is something that is very important because when you look at utility case scenarios, there are going to be a lot of cryptos and a lot of projects that are out there right now that will probably go to zero. And Lagarde is essentially saying that most of these are going to be the case. Now, the scenario is not necessarily the case with XRP. In fact, the XRP rollout is going back to the whole push of the fact that it has so much utility. And it's basically a technology in which that's already operational. It's already doing all the things that Ripple has been trying to do for quite some time. And Lagarde is in a position, I think, now to where she's probably starting to address many of these kind of utilitarian components. But MiCA is a project or a legal position that's being taken by the European Union. And they're really going after crypto assets in general. There's a lot happening around that. I'll probably do a video on that to kind of explain what MiCA is. But there is a lot happening. And the key here, though, is that if you have something that is really based on a utility model, then the likelihood is it's going to sidestep what happens with MiCA. We'll see how all this kind of plays out. But of course, Brad Garlinghouse, I think, is in a good position to where he kind of does already kind of talk about that. And I want to kind of showcase a couple of clips here on Davos 2022, where Garlinghouse is there, and he says, hey, listen, we've already kind of had this conversation with Lagarde, so let's go to that.
Are focused on solving a problem. And those are ones that I can see being used in the future, and we could give a number of different examples. Some of them are present here in Davos. But there's also ones that I look at, I hear the description, and I don't get it. And I think there is risk, as Christine Lagarde commented. They are speculative, they are risky. But that doesn't mean there isn't real opportunity.
Brad, I find this conversation refreshing. We've spoken to so many crypto experts out there who know nothing about this and who just want the gamification of it. They just want to encourage people into various Ponzi schemes. I hear what you're saying. We're great fans of what blockchain technology can do. But just to categorically say, you think most of these products are just going to disappear and investors are going to lose their money over the coming years?
I think there's a high risk that, well, certainly when you say most, meaning more than 50%, I think there's a high risk that most of this fails.
How many fiat currencies in the world are there? About 180?
Look, there is clearly examples where these can be used. What Ripple is doing with our digital asset that we use in our technology stack called XRP is solving a cross-border payments problem. And that cross-border payments problem we all have experienced. When you're moving money cross borders, it is slow and it is typically expensive.
So I want to pause it there because the people that were interviewing Garlinghouse here really kind of leaned in on this whole issue that there's a lot of these kinds of technologies that are going to go to zero. Now, listen, we've seen this already. I've seen this dance, many times over, whether you look back in the 1999 era on the dot-com bubble. There were so many companies that were doing exactly what we're seeing in crypto right now that went to zero. It's no different. We're still seeing that today, even at the highest level, in which companies are accelerate up with ridiculous valuations and then literally fall to the floor. We've seen that here recently just in the traditional stock markets. So I can't necessarily agree with the fact that most crypto assets, 50% or more, are going to do that. The key here will be Web3's innovation structure. Now, Web3 innovation and what that might mean to the next layer of technology is going to come from blockchain companies. And these blockchain companies are not going to use the traditional model in which they use to raise capital, and that means going IPO or traditional venture capital. Those kind of models are pretty much broken in the essence of, and the potential essence of, using a token. Now, sure, there could be a lot around this that leans into the fact that many of these things are securities, and all they have to do is certify that they are securities and start utilizing the proper methods and models in place to ensure that they don't get into the same kind of scenario that of course, XRP and Ripple got into with the SEC. So a lot happening, I think. The good stuff is that I think the proof is in the performance, and that's exactly what I'm talking about right here. Ripple signs a new partnership with international money transfers firm to use XRP for cross-border payments. The point is they're not slowing down. They're going to continue to really kind of grow. This is a small Lithuanian financial technology firm that's essentially going to initiate this. But remember, and they kind of mentioned this in that clip before, there's 180 currencies. There's, think about the amount of economic architectures that are in place around the world that need this kind of cross-borderless transactions. That's the marketplace for XRP. So again, really leaning into where the potential is pretty cool. This article really kind of jumps to XRP treading water as everybody kind of is waiting the SEC versus the Ripple court ruling. And I think we're still stuck with a little bit of time here, but it also gets me in a position where I start to think about whether it's dollar cost averaging or jumping into Ripple during these periods of time. So, and I'd like to know, are you guys investing into Ripple right now when it is in the 40-cent range? Or are you looking for Bitcoin to drop further and maybe Ripple to follow it down? I'm kind of curious as to what your strategies are. I'd love to kind of get your comments there if we can pull a poll on that. But remember, by the way, don't forget to put your questions in the sidebar. We'll try to get to those as we can. But you can kind of see here, key insights, been a range bound over the weekend. Saturday, XRP rose a little bit. This week, the SEC filed its response to Ripple's reply on the SEC brief on Hinman. That was kind of a silly situation where they weren't even sure if it was Hinman in the video, which to me was just ludicrous. The court ruling could materially influence the outcome of the SEC versus Ripple case on the price action. And there's a lot still happening within the case itself, but at the same time, it does appear to be winding down. And I think Jeremy Hogan, John Deaton, the big attorneys that kind of are talking more and more about this, do see a potential lengthening of the potential opportunity, at least of clearing Ripple's name from the SEC situation. So it may be later this fall, but the point is timing is going to be pretty critical here as we start to see a lot of this. So Ripple lawsuit also seeing big motion as the attorney requests to represent the 67,000 XRP holders. And again, this is something that they're kind of pushing back on. This is John Deaton, crypto legal expert, highlighting a major development in the U.S. Securities Exchange. Attorney XRP supporter John Deaton has filed the letter requesting to represent the 67K. And the move is a direct response to the SEC wanting to bring in the experts to testify on what XRP thought was when they purchased the sixth largest crypto asset. So I think the play here is that the SEC is trying to figure out how they can circle the wagon, so to speak, and get these XRP holders to assume that they were buying a security. It might be one of the last ditch efforts to try to move in that direction. So still a lot of action as we continue to see this case move about. SEC versus Ripple. Amici takes aim at duties reasonable condition, which is under the XRP holders assertion. And this is kind of what they're talking about. This is where John has talked about filing this motion, asking the judge to permit him to write the brief on behalf of the holders. This move comes, of course, on the heels of the testimony from the expert SEC witness. This is Patrick Doody, who gave the report on what information was reasonable for XRP holders relied on when they were buying the tokens. So again, this is a positioning by the SEC to maybe get out of compliancy issues with these holders based on their losses. That in itself could be an absolute barn burner against the SEC. And I think Deaton starts to see and feel. I probably should get John back on the show and we'll talk about this, because this could be a longer situation for the XRP holders versus what's happening for Ripple, even when the Ripple case does start to line up. And you can kind of see on the tweet right here, this is kind of just the whole point. An expert at SEC gave a report on what information was reasonable XRP holders were relying on when they bought the token. Deaton says he bets this witness gave testimony without interviewing a single XRP holder. So that, to me, again, just shows two sides that are trying to position Deaton over here, trying to position as the representation. The SEC trying to say, hey, listen, maybe these people aren't doing anything because they thought it was an investment at the time, and in this particular case, leaning toward a potential scenario where it would be a security. So very, very interesting play out here. You can kind of see a little bit more about what they're representing and how this all plays into it. But such assistant would prove to be beneficial during briefing on disposition motions. However, court may exercise its discretion to request or deny further applications as appropriate. So this again gets back to the whole point that they may not allow any of the pile-on, so to speak, into this. So there's still a lot happening around this, and I think a lot will start to kind of play out. Here's another tweet over here from John that really kind of was interesting to me. And this is, I've said it before, Gary Gensler will resign after the midterms. That's this fall in November. And when he starts getting called to the Hill by Patrick McHenry and the Senate to answer questions, but in the meantime, he'll try to severely wound crypto. This is the concern I have and a lot of people have. And this, of course, is Citadel's Ken Griffin brutally chastises the chair, Gensler. I would love to see Gary Gensler pivot from talking about regulating to actually providing some regulatory clarity. So again, a lot of people on Gensler's case, I think his days are numbered at the SEC, and the likelihood of Ripple being one of the nemesis of this in itself, but also crypto as a whole, because of the position that I think cryptocurrency is going to continue to place on when we look at not only the midterms, but also the next presidency. So lots happening on the political stage for sure. Let's get into whether or not, XRP can break out of this 40-cent range, because that has really been the case that a lot of people are looking at right now. And the charts are still leaning into the fact that we're probably going to waffle a little bit around this 40-cent range for a little bit. Now, there are some signs that are leaning in from a sentiment standpoint that does have a little bit of indicator that we could see some upside. But I still think long-term wise, this is a great opportunity, at least for me, to do some dollar cost averaging. Remember, these are market movers. We're going to give you data. We're providing you a lot of other insights. But the key here is that it's not investment advice. This hopefully is just giving you guys enough ammunition to where you can kind of start to position your own portfolios in the direction you want to go. So make sure to remember that. Just because of that, there are still experts out there that are saying, hey, wait a minute, we don't think XRP is going to go up. We think, in fact, it's going to dump to 19 cents. So again, I'd love to see your thoughts on this. If you think it's going to go down or dump to 19 cents and another opportunity to grab XRP and Ripple, or do you feel like this is absolute ludicrous? We won't see this even if Bitcoin comes into the mid-20s or low 20 range of things, because I think that will be the scenario that would have to be at case. I was just looking at the Xrp Ledger. This is kind of an interesting, I'll pause it for a second. This is actually going through and transacting all the transactions that are happening across Ripple right now. And you can kind of see there's everything from, I'll hover one, offers being created on transactions. Here's an executed payment. There's one that's a cancellation. So this to me is just, again, proves out the case as we continue to see technology like this work on a scale level. And again, this right now, we're looking at average transaction ledger here at 62.94, 16 seconds on the transaction. I mean, XRP is definitely one of those tool sets that's definitely going to be one to kind of hang around for sure. And if you've never really followed XRP, maybe this is the first time that you've really got into it and understanding it. I always tell you to go over to xrpl.org. It'll give you a little bit more insights to what's happening within the entire ledger itself and what it simply means to the overall crypto community and how XRP can play into this in the future, what it means to cross-borderless payments. Maybe it's the first time you've ever even explored XRP and you're thinking about buying it. That's another scenario you'll have challenges on, is getting to XRP. There's enough videos out there that shows you where you can buy XRP. It's available. Even if you're in the United States, you can kind of get to it through certain mechanisms. Let's jump over to a poll real quick. Take a look at what you guys think about these. All right, so when are you starting to take XRP profits? $1 or less, small amount. $2 or higher, interesting. Never. And then I'm taking a loss and selling everything, so a small amount. But the never, 30%. That is a very interesting statement there. $2 or higher, I feel like, is actually a little bit under, but overall, for me, my sell position is between the $3 and $4 mark. I do feel like we're going to see that. It's now, again, we may not see it in this particular bear cycle for sure, unless we see a win on, the SEC case. And even to that point, it would have to be timing wise to really kind of fit in. So lots happening. I want to get over to, this was just quick top coins for 10x potential: Stellar, Ripple, maybe Log. I don't necessarily know about that one, but definitely Stellar and Ripple potentials in there. If you guys have not also checked out our latest sentiment chart, you can see a little bit of lift right here on XRP. That's as of today, actually, a little bit up. But again, a lot of flat run right here, which has been that 40-cent run right there. A little bit of that dip when we saw, XRP come from around 70 cents down to the 40. It's been holding there for quite some time. The concern still is it's holding somewhat steady in comparison to the declining market, at least until this last couple of weeks, or a couple of reporting periods on sentiment. And this is our CPI, so the way that you get to this is pretty simple. If you are a CPI member, you can just jump up to our website. Maybe you've done it this way before. You go to your library. You jump into the dashboard. You'll go over to dashboard and just click on top crypto, and that's going to feed you all the tokens, and you can drop in right there on XRP and many other tokens as well, and that'll paint out the overall sentiment, amplification, and the overall market comparison to kind of keep track of what's happening there. I want to jump to some questions because I know you guys have a ton here. The Hillbilly, just think of what the relist across all exchanges would do for XRP. We're definitely watching there's actually a couple of websites out there that you can go out and look and keep a note on for relisting when XRP does get relisted. And I think it's gonna happen for sure. It's just a matter of time. If Bitcoin dumps, expect a 27-cent XRP. That might actually be, I'm thinking not necessarily breaking the 30-cent line, but it could happen, in comparison, because remember what it took to get XRP down to 40 cents. A lot of things had to really happen. Think about that. Recession potential, high inflation, Bitcoin taking a hit, and we had a war happen. All of that is what's been going on in terms of pressure. So definitely a big one there for sure. After court case, what's realistic price? Again, I think it's timing. I'm still looking for, if they allow the court case to clear during a heavy recession, the $1 mark would be a big win. If we are clearing and you want to ride this out, I still think that XRP is a $3 to $4 play for me. Many people, though, still see it, considerably above that. So lots of different opportunity. Is Lasso going to go in 2023? Some people are pointing in that direction. I think Jeremy Hogan even mentioned that. Are we going to see 38 cents today? I don't know. Right now, we've got a little bit of a slight upside, but at the same time, with the market conditions, Mondays are always very interesting to watch, for sure. Bitcoin red alert at the moment. Let's take a look at Bitcoin on trading. Let's just take a look quickly at the market cap there. Yeah, 29.3, yeah, because we've got a little bit of sideways action again. Ethereum holding in right there at $2,000, just dipped under, and XRP still holding in 41. So interesting. What's your best metaverso plays? So a lot of metaverse stuff we've got coming out this week. So we're going to do a top 20 metaverse video this week. So we've got a couple of potentials out there, especially some that are trading very low right now, and could be an opportunity there for sure. Sean, XRP equals Luna part 2. Boy, that would be... Let me explain this. If XRP... First of all, Luna never had a baseline of utility like XRP, nor did it have global customers in 46 countries. So I still would argue that. But at the same time, you can't put it out of realization. I mean, we had, think about all the potential issues that we've had with major projects that have fallen in the stock market here recently. So you never know about those kind of things. I just don't necessarily think that's going to be the case. What month are you thinking? November, because of Gary Gensler leaving. Gensler, if he gets dismissed or if he decides to step away, that in itself will probably have some positive nature. But again, we may get someone that's even worse than Gensler in there, so you just can't always lean in on that. So XRP will pump, but not back to all-time high. I'm kind of in and out on that one. I just feel like XRP still has the potential here for a monster move. Kryptonian, DCA, and XRP, mostly skeptical about the court outcome. I don't know that I'm skeptical. I still feel, listen, it's the SEC. They're fighting tooth and nail. They're doing what they have to do to try to save face and also position for the overall crypto, for sure. By the way, guys, you're asking a lot of questions, which we love, and we like answering questions, but you got to hit the like button. That's the number one thing. That helps us out. Hit that like button. Tell other people about the show, too. Let them know. Crypto Stevo. Banks and governments want CBDCs or maybe a stable coin, not XRP. That's just fact. It is, yes, there are cases like that, but I don't think XRP is trying to act as a CBDC or a stablecoin. This is a cross-borderless payment infrastructure, and the utility side of it from Ripple's case is a bit different than a CBDC. So I'm not necessarily on that boat. Which one would you pick, XRP, XLM, or HBAR? That is an interesting question. So I like XRP. HBAR is a very interesting project, and we've had them on the show before. Check out our interviews with them, because Mance has been on our show a couple of times. Their potential is real. HBAR is a very interesting project, but it doesn't have the kind of market presence, even though they have some unbelievable partners. Their partners are Google. I mean, you could name every Fortune 500 out there, and they've got a ridiculous partnership with them. So I would still say XRP, maybe HBAR number 2. Of those 3 that you gave me. Ripple is patented ODL. Don't you think XRP will go much higher than 3 to 4? Again, it goes back to mainstream. If mainstream adoption does occur, if we start to see the step aside, if SWIFT realizes that it is a true validator for cross-borderless payments, and SWIFT in some way partners or adopts certain layers of that, now that's a global push to what Ripple could be doing. So definitely could be a play for sure. Patrick, impressive on how the plaintiff is dragging the case on for so long. Yeah, absolutely, man. But this is the SEC. They're going to do what they have to do. What are your thoughts on Illuvium land sale coming up in June? We did and will be. We just did a piece on the Illuvium land sale not too long ago. We probably should get Kieran Warwick back on the show to talk about that, because it's one that we talk to Illuvium all the time. But we still like Illuvium, so good stuff there. XRP, when is it time to load up on more? For me, if it gets down under 35 cents, I think that to me is a buying trigger. Again, that's my strategy, not an investment advice, but it's a buy trigger to me. I'm looking at maybe some opportunities there. But I do this right now with a handful of altcoins, because I just feel like these altcoins are just so undervalued right now. But again, double recession hit, interest rates, more CPI numbers starting to pressure us, job loss numbers coming in. Those are the kind of things that hurt in the dead of summer and could push Bitcoin into some really stressful situations, which would enable some of these opportunities for buying. Let's see here. There's a bunch. Man, you guys have a lot of video or a lot of questions coming through. Do you think Ecomi will survive? I'm going to put that one on the bubble. I don't know if it will or not. I think Vivi and Ecomi in the overall have a play, but the key here will be timing. At the same time, all the market is going down. You've got to be able to live through the winter, the cold, hard winter. It's kind of like Game of Thrones right now. Some of these will not last the winter. and the ice walkers are coming, and we don't know who they are. So it'll be interesting. All right, guys, that's a bunch. Thanks again for stopping in. Make sure to share this with your buds and your friends, maybe your family. Hopefully this is an education show that really helps you guys dive into a lot of what's happening in Web3, cryptocurrency, obviously, and really kind of the gaming sector. If you don't follow our show, Metaverse Insider, it's a big one. We cover this both on the podcast side and on the video version, but right here on YouTube is the place to be. So thanks again for tuning into the live stream. And again, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you have not already. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.